you're on.
All right, so welcome to another episode of The Takedown from All Takes. This is episode number 30, and we are here now interviewing Coach Mike Debellis, who has been with Greeley Wrestling as the head coach since 2008. And you did coach in the modified level and as a JV coach a year before that?
I did modified since 2003.
Okay.
I got to Seven Bridges 2003, I think. So I did modified right off the bat, which was great.
Welcome aboard. And for any of you who don't know, my name is Anthony Marino, and you know Anthony Tatora. I consider both of these men personal friends, and Coach took me on as an assistant coach for Horace Greeley Wrestling, and I've forever been grateful to him for that, and a big supporter of Greeley Wrestling. So without further ado, here is Mike Debellis.
Love it. This guy's the intro master, and I love it. Coach, I'll start though, just because it's the age-old question, like you said. Well, either way, I mean, it don't matter. I can't stay quiet that long. I have an issue. I like to be the center of attention, I guess, in the blabber.
It is your podcast.
I can't slow down though. I have a problem. And just D, you told us in Sean's interview, but you know, I think the whole world. I don't know if anybody made it through. I think that was like an hour and a half interview to the end. I think a lot of people would be interested to know how Mike Debellis got into wrestling.
Well, I was like I said, I was on the gymnastics team in 5th and 6th grade, which was really great. This guy Dan Griffin was the coach, and my brother Joe was on the team, and so it was great. You know, like you got to do flips around the bars and all this stuff. And then there was a point where the coach said, "Okay, now you're spinning around on this high bar. You got to jump off." And I'm like, "No, why would I do that? It makes no sense." So then there was a tournament, an in-the-school tournament, and he's like, "Well, why don't you try that?" And I said, "All right." I walked over to the other side of the gym, and there was a wrestling tournament going on, and I entered it. And I should have brought the thing. I had a little plaque like this big, and I won the tournament. It was just inter-school, you know, like it was just. And the next year, I joined the modified team, and Coach Bill Tuardi was a great mentor to me my whole life. I still talk to him. And I wrestled there in 7th grade. I did pretty well. And then in 8th grade, they moved me up to the varsity, 98-pounder. And I took some beatings. My first match on the varsity was against a guy named Mike Sullivan from Pearl River. He was a senior. I was an 8th grader. And they said, "He's a section champ." And I'm like, you know, I was an arrogant little kid. That's it. God, who cares? Section champ. What does that mean? Who cares? He beat the daylights out of it. I mean, it wasn't even nice. He had a mustache. He beat me up. He was 18 years old. And then I wrestled another guy.
Well, at least he wasn't 23.
He might have been. I don't know.
He didn't get arrested. He doesn't have a rap sheet.
So, no. But that's how I got into it, you know, and the rest is history.
Did anyone in your family before you wrestle?
My brother Kenny wrestled for a short time in the middle school in the modified, and he was a great athlete. And growing up, he was he was my mentor too. Growing up, my brother Kenny was a great. He coached me in basketball. He was 3 years older than me, but he loved wrestling. But you know, in my family, we kind of grew up poor, or we did. We were on welfare when we were kids, and you know, all my brothers had to work, and you know, none of them could finish high school because they had to work and stuff like that. So, you know, he always ingrained in me. He says, you know, you got the rest of your life to work. You know, play sports now. And, you know, so he encouraged me. He was the one that got me on the varsity team by talking to Coach Tompkins.
He's a good big brother right there.
He's the best. Yeah.
Coach, before we get like into family, because I want to talk about all that stuff too, because I think Coach Marino asked some really good questions about that stuff yesterday. I just want to talk about gymnastics real quick, because I think that's really interesting. You think it helped a little bit? Because like Tommy Antes was a gymnast, and that kind of made him like a natural, like, a lot of upper body strength, you know, I don't know. Do you think there's some benefits of that?
Yeah, I only did it in school. It was only like a club. 5th and 6th grade was intramural. And, but yeah, I mean, the guys that actually finished the sport, we had a very good gymnastics team in high school. Then they dropped it. But those guys were jacked. I mean, those guys were strong. I mean, they were doing body weight stuff constantly. I think gymnastics, I mean, Nikki and Jake, once this pandemic is over, I'm going to put them down in Chappaqua. You know, just to get that agility and to get the.
It's a good idea.
Oh, there's, you know, it's great for upper body strength, and you know, So
Lead. Gymnastics is tough, man. I just wanted to. I didn't want to over step that because I feel like that's I'm very biased to wrestling, but I think gymnastics is right up there. Even though it's not one-on-one, it's a tough sport. Those guys, those girls, there's a lot that goes into that. So
knowing how your body moves and how it's going to react. I mean,
strength and body awareness. I mean, key.
Sure. I was thinking about Tommy today and that backflip that he does when somebody grabs a single on him. We got to tell him not to do that.
Scary.
It's dangerous.
Well, you know why he does it, because he's a big fan of that kid RBY, Roman Bravo Young, and Roman does it. But Roman's also, the number 2 ranked guy in the country.
If the other guy doesn't react a certain way, you're in trouble,
though. Yeah,
but get hurt.
I've been dropped on my head a good amount, so I've recovered.
Have you?
Jury's out. Jury's out. But Coach, what's interesting about you? And I'm sure Marino has some really, really good questions about the whole thing. But I want to say too is you didn't. So you end up being. We'll get to your senior year and all that stuff soon. But you end up having a successful career. But you weren't a youth wrestler. You kind of started as a 7th, 8th grader, and you were able to develop really good. Do you think that was more because you were a tough kid and you just loved to kind of scrap, or do you think it was like you said, your coaches, or do you wish you had a couple years in youth? Your career was. You look at Jacob, Matt, and Aaron, who were very successful, and me, who was pretty successful. We all started wrestling, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, 4th grade. But then a guy like you, a guy like Greg Einfrank, who was very successful, started off at middle school and still had great careers. Do you think it's possible? And I don't know, speak on that maybe a little bit.
There was really no opportunities for us to wrestle any earlier. I mean, we used to fight. We used to, I had 3 older brothers, and that's all we did. And I had a lot of cousins in the town, and I was the youngest out of everybody at the time, youngest boy in the family out of 18 kids. And we were always scrapping and playing sports, and all my cousins were good athletes. But I was the only one. Oh, who else wrestled in my family was my great uncle Mike. And he was really good. He used to go back and coach. He lived to be 99.
Wow.
His name was Mike Debellis too. Good name.
Wow.
But I don't think he ever came to one of my matches though. It's weird.
Well, that's interesting. So you get to high school, you get your butt kicked in the beginning. But do you remember, I don't know if Coach Marino asked this question yesterday or you asked this question yesterday, but I think it's a really good question. How did the rest of the team treat you as an 8th grader, the youngster on the team?
I was a wise guy, Coach. I was a wise guy. I was the youngest in my family, so I got away with a lot of stuff. And, I pretty much got, some people Terry Barry was a great mentor to me. He was a senior. He was best friends with my brother Kenny. And he was a senior, and I was 8th grade. He was great. We used to run hills together. He used to take me, and this guy was straight-laced, never drank, just a great, great mentor. But then there was other guys on the team that didn't like me. And I was, I wasn't very, I was abrasive, let's say. And, so if somebody gave me crap, I'd give it right back to them. And so there was some scraps with some older kids, but for the most part, after freshman year, I was one of the better kids on the team. So
I could see 8th grade Coach Marino. Couldn't you see 8th grade Debellis being a funny guy? I can't picture 8th grade Debellis. But I could sure think as a coach, I would probably love him, but I would also give him probably the head shake every once in a while. Like, Debellis, get it together,
I give him the head shake quite often. And for anybody who's watching these podcasts or YouTube interviews and who doesn't know Coach Debellis, he's the type of guy that will talk to anybody, anywhere. When you're out, like if we're out at a tournament or an overnight tournament, he would go up to somebody in the restaurant. Hey, I knew you from so-and-so. And the person's like, he'd be like, no, I didn't. And he can meet anyone like that. And he's talking to a random stranger. And then within 5 minutes, it's like they knew each other since high school. He's got a knack for just breaking the ice and talking to people. He's a great guy. He truly is. And one of a kind, I think. But,
Coach, can I tell you a funny story before you finish that about meeting random people and talking to people? We were at States one year, I think. And like you said, Debellis is a special guy. Like, he can get along with anybody. He's so easygoing, and it's fun. He's always fun to be around. Even in bad moments, he's a good guy to have around. He just knows how to, handle situations, But, I don't remember I was annoyed about something. It wasn't at him, of course. We were walking, and I'm like, Debellis. And we kept seeing people we knew, actually knew. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to talk to this person. And like, I'm the opposite, right? And I'm like, Debellis, stop saying hi to everybody. Stop. So once I said that, this guy starts seeing random people. He'll, hey, how's it going? Hey, you want to talk? Hey, what's up? I'm like, this guy's messing with me. And these people would stop and talk to him. And I'm like, what is going on right now?
I've noticed now in the pandemic, people want to talk. I mean, just random people are coming up to me now, and like just all these long conversations. It's weird.
That's because they're trapped in their house forever.
Yeah, it's true.
People want to talk.
So, I want to ask you a question. Getting back to what Coach T was saying, when you were on the team as the 8th grader and you said you would give it back to the older kids, obviously these kids knew your older brother. Yeah. So do you think that helped you? Do you think that hurt you? How did that aspect play?
No, I think, like I said, the seniors and stuff like that were, they were on their own thing. They could care less about me.
Yeah.
It was more like the guys that I was competing against. When I was a freshman, I was going against a senior at that time. He was sucking down. He wasn't very good, but, so those guys, they would be a little different. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think it helped.
How was your team or your teams overall in your 5 years through Carmel? Because I know Carmel always has the reputation about being tough and scrappy and producing some good athletes.
Yeah, Mahopac was our major competition. They were a town. They're the same town as Carmel. They're actually a hamlet of Carmel, which I don't, not a lot of people know that, but they're just a little hamlet. So, but yeah, we used to battle with Mahopac. I mean, it was war. And when I was a sophomore, John was on their team, and there were some real battles. I think in 1990 was our best year. We had a lot of great wrestlers: Josh Mastrangelo, Brian Trary, Ryan Tompkins. I mean, all 2 section champs there. And 1990, we tied Mahopac. We had ties at the time, and there was 3 weight classes in a row that we tied. I tied this guy De Blasio at 126, and then Eddie O'Rourke tied, and then I think John Kralik tied. And we ended up tying the match, got a league title. I think it was our only league title. Mahopac was better than us, usually. They trained all year, though. Or they didn't train all year, but they took it really serious.
Yeah.
Was it a culture, though? Did you have, when we talked about yesterday in my interview, when I first got to the varsity, there was 9 kids on the team. Was Carmel's, tradition strong? Like, when you were an 8th grade or even, 8th grade, 9th grade, did you have, 25-plus kids on the team? Or?
Yep.
So it was respected.
Bill Twardy was a great modified coach. We had 50 guys on our modified.
Wow.
And Carmel still does. They have Coach Robin.
He does a great job, too, yeah. He's a nice guy.
He's an incredible – I mean, he's been doing modified for 20 years. And they get 50 kids on their team every year. And then they come up to the high school and they lose a lot of them. But, the kids that stay, are pretty good. But Carmel traditionally is very tough. During the years that I was there, though, there wasn't many section champs. There was a lot of section finalists. And for some reason or another, like Derek Brackey was on my team, and he was doing WWE moves before a tournament, dislocated his shoulder. Another guy got into a scrape in school and hurt his ankle before the turn. So there was a lot of bad luck things that happened to good wrestlers. And but after that, then we started to win a couple section titles. So Mastrangelo won a title in 1991. And Ryan Thomas, then me and Josh both won section titles the next year. And then after that, you had McCabe, and you had John Lee, and you had
now PJ Duke.
PJ Duke this year.
No, he's pretty good.
We never had a state champ until this year. We had a second.
Who's second?
I think his name was Tony Olang.
Before or after you?
Way before.
Okay, so wow. So it was a while before they made a big splash again. Before we finish your high school career, because I don't want to rush through it, I want to talk a little bit more in depth about it. But you said you were fighting with your brothers, and you told me before that you were a little bit of a wise guy. But you're one of the best people I know. But when you're a kid, and you get into scraps and you do things. You said you got into a lot of fights, correct?
Well, I mean, it was kind of we just used to wrestle
that
around.
Was kids. I mean, I think that was more kids maybe back then, especially in a town like Carmel where kids are tough.
We were out all the time. I mean, we were never home.
Do you think wrestling was a good outlet, though, for that? To keep you out of getting in trouble with stuff like that and get into fights and get into things that maybe weren't going the right direction?
Well, Mr. Perry, the principal at the high school, was also a wrestling referee. And he tells a story, because I still talk to him. And he's like, oh, we heard about this kid coming up. He's real trouble, you know. And when I got into wrestling and Coach Kim Tompkins and Bill Twardy and those guys, they were father figures to me, you know, and I didn't want to get in any more trouble. And it wasn't, you know, so I was busy from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock every day. And then, you know, then you had to go home and take care of business there too. So if it wasn't for wrestling, I probably would have a different trajectory. There's no doubt I would have. There's no doubt I would have a way different trajectory. Wrestling kept me in school, got me into college, got me through college, and, you know, pretty much paved the way for my life. You know, if it wasn't for wrestling, I'd be way different, I'm sure.
We've heard that almost every interview, you know, and
Yeah.
the guy that is the first, you know, I was at Greeley before coach as an athlete, but he's the first coach, like Coach Marino said in the intro, 2008, but you started coaching Greeley in 2003. You've been around all of these guys that we've interviewed, right? And for the guy that's been around all these guys that we've interviewed has that same response of wrestling kind of put me in this position. And I think that's an interesting point.
Well, I think wrestling is just, you know, sports in general. If you could commit to something for a common good, and you know, I think it's going to help you just understand winning and losing for one thing. You know, winning and losing is the hardest thing in the world. You know, losing a match, losing a girlfriend, losing a loved one, you know, losing your keys. I mean, everything, it's tough. And wrestling teaches you that, you know, you got to pick yourself up and you got to get after it again. So, and, you know, it keeps you honest, I think, you know, so.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, obviously we grew up at a little bit different time than these kids, and it was different. You were allowed to lose, you were allowed to fail, and you had to deal with it. It's not here where everybody's getting a trophy and everybody's fixing you a play date. You went and you knocked on your friend's door. You got rejected by the parents by them saying he can't come out and play. It's dinner time or whatever. And it didn't matter. You learned, you dealt with it. And like Coach just said, you know, the lessons that athletics teach you and the sports teach you are, to me, more important and just as important than the lessons you'll learn in school. I mean, this is how you deal with people for the rest of your lives. And it's a special bond.
Yep. I'm still friends with my high school wrestling, you know, and the college guys, best friends, you know.
Yeah, we'll get to college. I know you're really tight with those guys, and I think you had a good experience there. But before we get past like 8th and 9th grade, you know, you were a tough modified guy or 7th grader when you did the tournament and all that stuff. But you said you got moved up to varsity in 8th grade and you kind of got your butt kicked. Were you having any success though as an 8th grader, getting some wins here and there, or like how did that like first year in varsity really go?
I think they used me. I don't think I wrestled all that many matches because I came in late in the season. I think, you know, because I had to do the testing and all that stuff. So by the time I got in, I do remember that first tournament though where I wrestled Mike Sullivan. He beat me, and then my next match I wrestled like, you know, I don't know, it might have been a freshman or a sophomore, and it was a tough match and I lost, and I didn't handle it well. I took my headgear and I threw it on the mat, and I don't remember my feet touching the ground after that. I do remember ending up in a broom closet and my coach reprimanding me. And let's just say I never threw my headgear again.
It's a different time too, and it might not have been. That's not a bad thing in my eyes, but it's a different time. You know, he loved you and he just wants you to do. He wants you to do the right thing and handle it the proper way. But did you take? Like, I found that interesting too. You said you took the test, you got moved up. When I was in middle school, and we were talking about this yesterday, and I couldn't move up. Right, I took it as almost a pride thing that there was even an opportunity for me maybe to get moved up. I thought it was really cool. Like, people in my grade knew that I could be a varsity athlete. I thought that was really cool. Like, I felt proud of that, even though, unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to do that. You know, I thought like other 7th graders knew that I might have been good enough to be on varsity. You know what I mean? I like really liked that. Were you deep enough into wrestling or deep enough into caring about wrestling as an 8th grader that when you got moved up to varsity, you're like, this is really cool. Like, I took a test, I'm on varsity. You know, my other 8th grade friends are still at that other school over there. Like, did you think like that?
Yeah. But, you know, and I don't think I really deserved to be up on the varsity. I wasn't that good, you know. But the problem was they needed a 98-pounder. Or was it 91, 98. They needed a 98-pounder. They had a hole there. So I didn't go up because I was really that good. I went up because, one, my brother said it to the coach that, hey, why don't you bring him up if you need a guy? And, you know, 2, because they needed a guy, you know. So it wasn't because I was like an extraordinary wrestler, but at the time I felt really good about it. And I think it solidified me as a wrestler. Like, you know, that was my what do they say? I don't know the word. My
Your
image.
aha moment?
No, not my aha moment. No, like it was my identity. My
Yep.
identity. You know, I identified as a wrestler at that point, and from then on, you know, it was just like, okay. So freshman year, I pretty much took a beating, went 500, probably. You know, but I moved up weight class. I went from 99 to 126. So that change was a big change. You know, different kids, and you know. But then as a sophomore, I think I was like 32-4.
That's a
So I
huge.
really came on the scene as a sophomore. Ended up wrestling like CJ Sylvester from Greeley in the Super 16 tournament in the finals. So I was in the finals of the Super 16 as a sophomore. And really, I mean, if I believed a little bit more and if I trained harder, I could have done better in high school for sure.
Well, I just want to touch on that real quick because that's a huge jump from going to, 500. Your freshman year too, you said you were about 500?
I mean, it just wasn't the year, you know what I mean?
But like you said there was no off-season wrestling really, or there might have been, you went to a couple camps. I know that was a thing later too. But like, what do you think? Do you think it was just maturity? Like, what made that jump from 9th grade to 10th grade so substantial? Were you taking practice, even though maybe in those 3 months, were you taking those 3 months way more serious? Were you like, what did it? Or do you think you were a tough kid, you were going into yourself a little bit, you're like, I could beat these guys?
Yeah, I had more success, and success breeds success. So I'd go out there and I'd wrestle and I'd win. And then I would win by bigger margins, and then I'd be pinning. And then, momentum's a big thing in sports. So if you start losing a lot, you're going to be losing a lot, And then, but I like to win, I like to go out there and battle. I enjoyed it. It was something that, like you said, was a release. So I'd go to practice and I'd always be wrestling the older kids and, trying to battle with the kids that had a chip on their shoulder, and we would brawl. We would brawl. It was fun.
Well, it's funny, that you say that, because it's so true for everyone in every sport, that the confidence breeds that more confidence and success. Because a lot of times, in coaching, you see it in a kid, they might not see it in themselves, and you cannot give a kid confidence. You have to achieve it for yourself. We can coach them up, we can give them all the pats on the shoulder, but you have to do it yourself. And like you said, you won, you gained that confidence, and you just kept rolling and taking that momentum, and it skyrocketed. So, for all the kids out there, build on those moments, find your way, and gain that confidence and keep that confidence,
Well, and it probably felt better, and Coach speak on both of these things. Once you start getting those wins, like Coach said, with the confidence, you can kind of build off it. It probably made wrestling more fun. It probably made it more enjoyable. And we've had kids that weren't that successful, right, that I think still got a really good experience out of the program. And we pride ourselves on, we're hoping everybody has a good experience, but of course we want them to be the best them. I'm sure your sophomore year, when you were winning tournaments, when you were winning in the dual meet team, and we talked about how duels are fun and all that stuff, I'm sure, like, Coach, like, confidence-wise and just pure enjoyment, like, it was probably a lot different, right? Did you have a better time your 10th grade year once you started getting more success?
Yeah. As far as I can remember, I mean, it was, we had a great team my sophomore year. We had a great team. So up and down the lineup, we were tough.
But I bet you those duels were probably more fun because you guys were tough and things of that nature. But also,
we only had one gym. So if we were wrestling, basketball wasn't practicing. So the whole basketball team, we were friends with them. They would come, and people would stay after school. The gym would be packed, and they were loud and obnoxious, and it was great.
It's fun.
And, they would call you out before the matches. It was different. So you'd get introduced, and you'd have to shake hands before the match, before the whole event even started. At wrestling with this, and then you go out there, and the crowd would go crazy, and it was fun.
That's cool. I like that.
It was nuts, man. It was fun.
You guys deserve that spotlight. It's a tough sport, so to get that little moment in the spotlight is fun. And to build off what Coach Marino said, the confidence thing, I don't know if you needed the confidence because you seemed like you were a confident little 8th grader. And maybe your confidence got knocked down a little bit when you weren't as successful. You're like, when you said I could maybe beat this section champion, like, who cares who that guy is? And then maybe after 2 years, you were kind of like, maybe I need it.
I don't know if I was confident or just like trying to make it up. You know what I mean? Faking it. Because I don't think I was that confident. I think I was like more like,
cocky.
Yeah, like arrogant. Not even, but like more to the point where I wasn't confident and I was trying to, I don't know.
Show to your opponent or teammates that you were confident. You might not have been confident in yourself yet.
No,
But
no,
but it's like that saying, fake it till you
persona.
make it. Would you say?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I was saying a little false persona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like fake it till you make it's a real thing. Like if you're having, I think and Coach Debellis, you can really speak on this too. I think if somebody tries to tell you that they're not nervous and they don't have butterflies, they're lying. Right? Now, some people as coaches, I try my hardest to take as much nerves off as we can and go out there and compete like you're competing in the practice room, go hard, a match is a match, whatever. But at the end of the day, I almost think if you don't have a little bit of butterflies, then you don't care enough. Right. So
Yeah.
people should be nervous. Right. And sometimes people try to overplay, like you said, that persona a little bit, that they're not nervous. But meanwhile, it's like, dude, you could talk about it, tell us what's going on. It's natural.
At that time, there was great wrestling in Section 1, too. You had like Emilio Collins, you had Juan Carlos Garcia, Carlos Jimenez, Dave Hirsch.
For the guys listening, those are like a lot of Sleepy and Austin guys, right? We're really good at that time.
Down north was Hirsch.
Hirsch was Milton.
Sleepy was Juan Carlos Garcia and Jimenez.
Sleepy,
there were
right?
some great wrestlers. Emilio Collins was Tappan Z. But those are the guys that we looked up to as freshmen and sophomores. I remember my sophomore year, I lived next to Gino's Deli, going to get the newspaper on Sunday morning after states and seeing all those guys that won titles. And it was, they were the front page at the time.
What'd they do? Like, how'd they get better? They just were freaks and they trained in the season?
Those guys in Sleepy Hollow, I don't know what they did. I think they wrestled together somewhere. I mean, Emilio Collins was a two-time All-American, I think.
Yeah.
Dave Hirsch was the national champ for Cornell.
Well, these are names I've heard. Like, their name lived on for a while, so they were definitely really good.
Yeah, that's who I grew. Those guys were coming up. Those guys were when I was a sophomore. Those guys were top of the game for sure.
They were seniors.
Yep.
So you go into your junior year now. So wait, what did you place in sectionals your sophomore year?
No. You only placed if you made it to semis.
Okay, that's what you're saying yesterday.
Sophomore year, I wrestled a kid from Amerenik in the first round and won, and I don't know who I lost to. I lost to somebody the next round. But at that time, I think it was 132 or 138. I don't know what weight I was in. But there wasn't really a superstar in that weight class, so I had the potential to get it, but I just wasn't there yet. You know what I mean? I wasn't there.
Did you
lose
to that?
I wasn't a very good wrestler.
Did you lose to that kid from Austin named Manny your year?
I was doing it from Austin, my junior year.
He was a freshman at the time.
My guys, I still can't get over that.
Imagine Manny somehow watches this. He's like, yo, they're killing me right now.
Somebody might tell him. He might, yeah.
Yeah.
If Manny wants a piece of me now, I'll make up for that 12-0 match. Come see me. But anyway, so it was different back then. So you know what? It kind of stinks. I don't like how they did that because, like Coach Debellis says, and I think he's just being a little humble. Like if you're 32-4, especially when Section 1 was tough. I mean, Section 1 is tough now, but we've been going through peaks and valleys. And like you said, that was a good year. You might not have been the most technical guy in the world, but you were good. I mean, 32-4 is good. You're a real tough wrestler.
I don't know if that was the exact record.
But either way, even if it's close to that, right? We're ballparking, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's a stupid rule that you couldn't wrestle back unless you made it to the semis.
I don't know if it was a one-day tournament or I don't know how it was, but it was different. They did things differently back then. I'm glad that we do things the way we do now.
We're getting better and better, but that's anything, right? As a wrestler, you grew. As a coach, you grew. As a section, they're going to grow on what they do as well. I mean, you see things, you learn, you adapt. But, I think if I was in high school, I would have been pretty fired. Like, I bet you, like Coach Marino was talking about yesterday with, like, you don't know if you have the two best guys in Section 8 wrestling in the section finals, this and that. Third. You could have the section finals in the quarters if the bracket gets thrown out the wrong time. And now the guy that lost can't take third. Like, that's crazy to me. But, I mean, I guess everything happened for a reason. I'm sure you – being that was the rule, you probably weren't too,
look at it this way. The state finals before the wild card was the section finals with Jacob Ferreira and Jake Logan.
Yeah.
That's the state finals in the section finals. And if there's no wild card,
Coach, that happened this year too.
It happens.
That happened this year too. Quincy Downs from Fox Lane and Tyler Albus from John Jay. Section finals,
Right.
finals. And that one reversed. So Quincy, who won the section title, lost in the state finals. So if there was no wild card, the state champ would not have been going.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
pretty interesting. Both club guys, both great kids. That was frustrating. Great, and then frustrating at the same time that I had to watch them. I couldn't say anything. I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
But either way, somebody I liked won. So, that was cool.
That was the best scenario you could have. They were in the finals together.
In a way, yeah. It really is the best. It was just an awkward moment because I literally talked to both of them before the match, and I was like, I can't celebrate like crazy if you win. So know that I'm happy for you, but I can't, I can't do that. They both understood. But anyway, so you made a big jump to 10th grade. Lost in the quarters. Unfortunately, they had a silly rule where you couldn't wrestle back. So what happens your junior year?
Junior year, I don't think I placed either. Did I play? I don't think so. I wrestled. It might have been. No, I might have placed third or fourth. I might have placed fourth. I think I placed fourth my junior year. But I wrestled this kid Nick Grimaldi from Somers. I wrestled him in the Super 16 tournament, and he was like a couple time runner up in the section, and I cradled him in the Super 16 and beat him, pinned him.
Wow. And
so I caught him in the semifinals. And I remember warming up before that match and really like doing things I normally wouldn't have done. I was like just ready to go. You know what I mean? I went out there and he got me. He was a better wrestler than me. And and it was Dennis DeSanto on the other side. When I'm friends with Dennis from a long time. He used to be a neighbor of ours when I was growing up. So it was interesting, but he beat me. And then I think I took fourth. I think the other match was the semifinals and you went for third and fourth if you lost. So I took fourth that year.
What was the score? Do you remember in the semis match? Was it close?
It was close. I mean, I was down by 3 or 4 late in the match. And I do remember I gave him a little bit of a cheap shot, but, I'm sure he forgives me.
Maybe not. Oh, he's just calling me right now. He wants to talk crap. We're live. He was tough?
Yeah, he got me.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I feel like even though it didn't work out for me, I felt like I was really lucky my junior year to get that opportunity to go up to states and kind of see what it is, which to me almost makes it more impressive that you were able to turn it your senior year and get the job done, without maybe having that confidence and having that prior knowledge of those big matches. But before we jump to our senior year, I'm just curious, did you have what was your support system like? Right? Like I know Rocco now loves like this type of stuff. And
I don't think Rocco ever went to a wrestling match.
So they all were working, you said, because
they were all out working. Rocco might have been married at the time.
Wow.
Rocco got married at 21.
See, so that's why people like me. Yeah. Right, I'm sorry. No, go.
So my support system, my mother would come. My father would show up sometimes, not all the time. My Uncle Nick would show up. He was a great guy. He would come, watch the matches. He would just pop in, randomly. And my cousins would come. My cousin Nicky was coming. I remember being at the Somers tournament. He showed up. He's the oldest of my family as cousins. And he would show up and take me out to dinner and really do
nice.
And they went up the States. They drove up the States to watch me. So that was really great.
So you did have family support, but it just, sometimes people like me and how Jacob and those guys were with club wrestling, it was like my family was so involved where it was like, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Where it seems like, your mom was great. She loved you and she supported you, but you weren't doing this year round. It wasn't like, life or death maybe in their eyes. But I think that's really cool that your older cousin did that. What's that, Coach?
My mother is handicapped. She's arthritic and in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
She's like the toughest person I ever met in my life. So instead of like saying, okay, I can't drive, I can't do this, she figured out a way to get a handicap accessible van.
That's awesome.
And my parents were divorced since I'm a kid. So she raised 4 boys all by herself, pretty much. I mean, my father was around, but he was a weekend warrior type of guy. And but she drove up to, when I was in Oswego, she drove up to nationals. She drove up to, so she would drive in a van, drive 4 or 5 hours, and I thought that was really, really great.
Do you think that has something to do with you, your toughness? Seeing your mom do.
I don't think I'm as tough as she is. I mean,
I think it helped because the stories that you told me with your mom, and I know how close you are to your mom, and she seems like a great, great woman. Even if you weren't as tough as her, do you think, seeing how she would make sacrifices for you guys and see how she would do what she needed to do to get to your matches and all that stuff. Do you think that helped mold you kind of into the person you were? You know?
Yeah, I can't see complaining to her and
Makes
make
sense.
a complaint. You know what I mean? Like, oh, going home and complaining about something, and meanwhile she's in pain because this arthritis is kicking the crap out of her, and she's still willing to do whatever she's got to do to make sure we're eating and we're surviving. So yeah, no, she's tough, still tough.
What's all about.
It's amazing. So we're gonna go to your senior year now, right? You're going to I don't know, at this point in your life, did you realize that I'm going to go to college? This is my last chance at wrestling. What was your mindset going into your senior year? Because obviously you win the section title that year, and you go on to states. But what was it like leading up to that year? Did you just think that this was it? What was your thought? And then take us into your senior year.
I think college, I thought about college in middle school a little bit, but it wasn't really something that was on my map, It wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Senior year, I started hanging out with some guys. I played football and I was pretty successful. We had a very good team, and a lot of those guys were going to school after. I think that my grades weren't great, and so I thought, like a similar story to Tora. The guidance counselor told me I should go to Westchester. And I was like, okay, maybe, something like that. And so then I wrote a letter to Mike Howard up in Oswego, a long letter, and he still talks about it, how he kept it because he was so funny. The letter was like ridiculous. I said, I want to wrestle in college, and I ended up getting a special admit to Oswego, and I had to go into summer school because I was behind. My English and my math was way behind college level, and I had to go to summer school to actually get into the college, and I did that. And so I got there and I stayed there. I knew a lot of guys from Carmel, and that got into Oswego with high GPAs and high SAT scores, and they were gone in a half a year. They were gone, and I made it through, and I wasn't valedictorian, but I made it through. I went to class, and I did what I had to do to make it through. So I think wrestling made me, tough in that sense.
Coach, but we don't want to. I want to get that. I mean, that's great, and I think that's.
Let's hear about your senior season.
Yeah, I want to hear about it. I want to hear about that whole season. Like, what was your record? Like, you ended up winning. I know you won a section title. Not to give anything away. I want you to talk about the whole tournament. But like, were you expected to win it the whole year? Like, how did the season go? I know you did some camps. Did you do camp this summer before?
Jay Robinson the year before.
So that was like the big off-season training thing,
Yeah, I went with Master Angelo, one of the guys. He was really good. He was a heavyweight, man. He was like Burke St. John. This kid was a stud.
That's the one that beat John?
No, that was John Ciccone. That was the year before, 91.
Okay.
And he was good. But he wrestled John, but he didn't place at sections that year, I don't think. But I wasn't a superstar. I mean, I was a superstar for Carmel, but in the section, I wasn't a superstar. There were superstars. Like Mike Quaglio was a two-time state champ at 167, and Ambrose Aston tech fooled me the week at the Shoreline tournament, the week before divisions, and he was 145. So I bumped up to 155, and I wrestled the kid from Nyack in the finals. And I think I won. I dominated the match. I think I won 6-2, but I was sloppy. I wasn't good.
I think that Mike Quaglio wrestled at Hofstra. I remember that name from Hofstra.
He wrestled the Army for a little bit, and he might have transferred over to Hofstra. I don't know.
Before my time. I could find out, I'm sure.
He was tough. He was two-time state champ. He was tough.
Sounds like a tough guy. But
going to state practice and getting beat up.
But I love what you keep saying. And I love and I don't love because you weren't good. You keep saying you weren't good. But maybe your technique, you're section champ. You had 100 wins, especially back then, like we were saying before, we didn't have as many matches and stuff back. You guys, especially you guys. But you keep saying that you weren't good, but you were a section champ. So even if your technique wasn't good, there was something going right? And maybe it was just your pure grit. Maybe it was your pure determination and your will. But you figured it out, right? And I think that's a great story for our younger guys to hear because you don't have to be doing this as a third grader like me, right? And living and breathing it your whole life, and then you're in high school. You know, a guy like you, a guy like Greg Ironfrank ended up being a state finalist, like, you know, and he was, you know, he went to Brown, ended up being a genius. So he was picking up technique really quick and things were working out for him. But, you know, just to have that the guts to say, hey, you know, I could figure out a way to win this, even if, you know, maybe I don't have the crispest high crouch in the world or whatever. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying, you know, I just find that to be an empowering story because it's such a great sport. Like Coach Marino says, it's pass fail. You're out there, you win or lose. So what? You know, Aaron Walk was not a beast on his feet, but he dominated state to a state championship. You find a way to win, right?
Yeah.
And you are the essence of finding a way to win, and I love that.
Yeah, but at States, like, you know, I was happy to be there when I got to States. You know, and I didn't know the layout. So after I lost my first match, I lost a tough match to a kid from Section 3, like 5'4". This kid, Shane Bogardus. And I ended up wrestling him the following year in college and beating him. But I lost to him, and then I didn't even realize I was going to wrestle again in a wrestle match right away. And I just had a terrible match. But the guys in my weight class, the guy that won the weight class was Jason Kraft from Sachem, coach.
My high school.
Yeah.
Graduated the year after me, yep.
And you know who he beat in the finals?
No.
Mitch Clark.
Mitch Clark's a savage.
Yep. He beat Mitch Clark in the finals.
So Mitch Clark
Jason
was
Kraft.
champ.
Huh? Mitch Clark was never state champ. His little brother was.
Jason Kraft wrestled at Nebraska, and he now currently owns a wrestling gym in Fresno, California.
He was good.
So he works with those kids out in Fresno who we saw at Eastern States. You know, Clovis.
Clovis is good.
Yeah.
Oh, so this guy's a good coach too. On top of it,
Wasn't
that's a
Sore?
very powerful program. What'd you say, Coach Debellis?
What's that?
One of those guys from Iowa was from Clovis. I don't know.
Clovis is good. Like Clovis is like a powerhouse program for years and years. Like they're like a Blair almost in a sense.
Yeah.
They're really, really good.
I think I could have done better at States, but I wasn't ready.
So you said you were happy to be there and all that stuff, but do you remember like the experience of walking through? I know it was the War Memorial, Syracuse War Memorial, or whatever it was called at the time. I don't know if it's still there because we stopped having states there. But do you remember like you know, getting down there with your Section 1 gear and like looking around the arena and being like, "Holy cow, I'm here"? Do you think it was almost too much where it was like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like,
I was happy to be there, and my friends came up, and you know, I wish it was different, but it wasn't. It is what it is. You know, I didn't wrestle. I mean, I wrestled my first match pretty well, but you know, after like I just didn't wrestle well. The next match, I got pinned. I think I got pinned. Not good. I don't think I got pinned all year. Of course, I don't think I did. Yeah.
wow.
But
Now, do you think yourself that there was an emotional letdown after losing a match that you just didn't,
to win a state title. I was not up to win a state title. I was on vacation.
So, a little bit of a mindset. Like
Yeah,
if you would have been there, if you would have been your junior year, I guarantee you would have done better as a senior.
Yes,
You know, like
100%.
and people say this, and in professionals it's different. Like, oh, they have playoff experience. And I look at it and laugh. I'm like, all these kids, whether they were in high school or college or in the minors, have that professional experience. So when a kid or professional, like, oh, this team doesn't have professional, championship experience, I'm like, it's kind of laughable. But in your instance there, I mean, that's where it plays into effect.
And there's different levels. You know what I mean? I was not at the level of those guys in state. I mean, maybe some of the weaker sections, yes, but like a Jason Kraft, I was not at his level. I was not at Mitch Clark. Mitch Clark tech-folded me in a summer tournament, Empire State Games, in like probably half a minute.
To your defense, Coach, Mitch Clark also tech-folded this guy in the NCAA finals. So, I mean, Mitch Clark is very –
it was freestyle. I never did freestyle. So.
And that's another defense. But
no defense.
You know what I find really interesting too, and I keep saying find very interesting, but it is. When I lost my senior year, wrestling was my life. Like that's who it was everything to me. So they could have went two ways, and I decided that was going to drive me into my next chapter, right? And I ended up making that decision because I didn't know myself of anything else other than that, right? For you, yes, you love wrestling. You were the Carnival superstar, but like you said, you were on a vacation almost at States because you weren't used to that. You weren't there mentally yet, maybe.
Yep.
But from what I've met your college coach, I know some of your college teammates. and we're going to talk about college, but when you got to Oswego, you did a phenomenal job and you were totally bought in. And I think a lot of people in your situation where you weren't 100% there your senior year might have foregoed college wrestling there. You know, I'm a section champ. I went to states. I'm going to do now whatever. But you like almost refocused when you got up there, and it was like, no, I really like this, and I'm going to take this serious. Do you remember what did that for you? What made, and not to say, look, you were a section champ, you were a 100-win wrestler, tough as nails, but you know, mentally you weren't, your identity maybe wasn't 100%. I'm a wrestler. I'm going to do everything I can to be the best wrestler I am. What changed?
Well, I got to Oswego and I wasn't even going to wrestle. I was going to back out. I was going to say, oh, I got a bad back. I'm not going to do it. And I went to the first practice, and I just loved it. I mean, it was great, and it was a lot of running. I hate running, but we ran for the first week or so, and every day, it was just going back into that room. And then I started wrestling with those guys that have been there. And Oswego wasn't a powerhouse. I mean, they were top 20 in the country, Division III at the time. But I was going with all the seniors and the juniors. And I didn't really know a lot of – I remember learning a high crotch in college. It was odd. I mean, I was like, and then I just picked up the moves. Once I hit the move live in a go, then it was kind of mine, and I started developing a different technique. And they were very big into leg wrestling, which I wasn't. I knew about leg wrestling, but and then my freshman year, I mean, I was just kind of fumbling around my freshman year. I made the varsity, and I made the varsity at 158. And I remember beating a kid from Long Island in the wrestle-off. And this kid was like, he telling the coach, well, I'm going to be an All-American and this, that, the other thing. And I beat him 11-0. I mean, I poured it on him in the third period. I mean, it was kind of even going into the third period, and I poured it on him. And that kid never came back. He never came back. After that wrestle-off, I never seen him again.
Those Long Islanders. Those Long Islanders can be very arrogant.
Yeah.
He never came back.
Great ones, though.
There was a lot of guys. Wrestling in college was weird. It was kind of like a battle of attrition because people would drop. If it wasn't going their way, they were done.
I've said this to my kids, and like I've said, it comes down to your confidence, because we've been successful with placing kids in my sport who've played college. And the thing is, this is the first time in their life that now they're going to be in a position where everybody's like them. Yep. So it comes down to somebody's first time with failure might be there. And like you just said about that kid who thought he was going to be all world, all American, all this, all that, yep. He didn't beat you, and he turtled in a shell. He tucked himself in a shell, and he, went away. And
there were so many guys
that's
like
it.
There were so many.
Yep.
And I think that's what happens in college. There was a lot of guys that were great in high school that got to college and they just fizzled out. They were just burnt. I wasn't burnt. I mean, I only wrestled during the season. So when I got to college, and again, Oswego was in season, and that's it. We didn't train. Once March came, we were done. And we didn't start until November.
You guys didn't get on the mats or nothing?
No, none of us. None of us. And we were tough. We were pretty good.
No, I know. I mean, I've seen some of this stuff. And, I don't know about you. Tell me if this was something your freshman year maybe. When I got to college, I love the fact that, you'd walk around campus. It's a confidence thing, right? Like, wrestling was hard. Wrestling college was hard. I'm sure, like you said, you didn't love running, right? You didn't love it. I'm sure there's a lot of it.
I was last every time.
But I'm sure, walking around with your Oswego wrestling hoodie or whatever it was, and, like, people recognizing you to be an athlete in the school, you have pride in that. I mean, I think you could have that same pride as a high school athlete when your team is successful and you're part of something that people are like, oh, watch out, those are the wrestlers. Like, these are these guys. And you think that had anything to do with it? Maybe your freshman year seeing like, hey, I got this new family now, because like you said, those are your best friends still to this day. Like my hostel teammates are some of my best friends to this day right now, you're going through those struggles together. So you got that coolness factor of like, hey, we're a college team. People know that. And plus, these are my brothers now. Do you think that kind of had something to do with you saying, hey, I'm going to take this serious?
Yeah, 100%. I started to meet some guys, the freshman class. We had a big freshman class. And, I'm like I said, we're still great friends with a lot of those guys. Nick Byrne, I know you know Nick.
Yep.
He was in the freshman class. So we would hang out, and then we got a house together. And next year, me, him, his brother. And, yeah, it was great to be part of something that was different than everybody else, because they would be like, what do you mean you're going to practice? It's Friday. We're all going here. And I'd be like, well, I can't.
Yeah.
And then we would meet everybody out like Saturday night after a tournament. And it would be like, we'd get home at 12 o'clock and we would hang out for like an hour or two. And then that was it. And it was just good because what were they doing? They were wasting their time. They were wasting their parents' money while we were out there, training and going to see. I saw every college in New York. I went to Ithaca, RIT, Brockport, Cornell, West Point, all these different college campuses. We went down to NYU for states one year. I mean, it was just great. And the bond that you have with those guys going for winter session. We had to be back to school on the 26th of December, after Christmas for a 2-week intersession. And that was a great time too, because it was all the freshmen had to live with the seniors. And that was a lot of fun, but it was double sessions. So I think that's where you really bonded.
Now, when you were in college, and just like I was, and just like Coach Satora was, it is special. And everybody goes to school, but you are part of something from the school. Like you were saying, Coach, walking around with the sweatshirt or whatever that said your school's athletics, and knowing that you got yours for free while everybody else bought theirs in the bookstore was a different feeling. Yeah. And I remember when I was at my school, I used to follow on the wrestling coach's door because you wrestled in the tournament. It was like a New York Open. So you wrestled all the schools. Is that right? Because I remember watching for my friend's name who wrestled for Brockport and seeing where he placed in the New York State tournament. John Abley. Yep. Yeah. Yep.
He's an American.
He grew up probably 7 or 8 houses down from me. I probably saw your name on that list, not knowing who you were at that time. But I remember going to the wrestling coach's door, checking that, who did what where, and I called him, saw his name, and, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great.
I mean, and not to jump too far ahead in your college career, because Coach Debellis was a very successful college guy. And at the time, New York State's now they do it differently. It's not as competitive as it was when Coach was in college. When Coach was in college, all of the New York teams went. You know what I mean? All the New York teams went. That's D1, D2, D3. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, you were runner-up there. Is that right? And to me, that's way more.
I beat a kid from Cornell. I don't know what the kid's name was in the second.
Cornell's a powerhouse program, and that's more.
They won it that year. They won it that year.
Yeah, I mean, they're good, and that's more of an accomplishment, I think, than making a high school state final. So something changed in you. You're being these guys that are fully committed to this sport. And maybe, you could tell us what it, like, you really think it was, but maybe it's being with those guys on the team. Maybe it's being part of something special and feeling different. And you found a real identity in that. Like, I'm not sure, but that's a big jump. It might not, for the people that are listening, it's like, I don't understand. He took second at a turn. No, New York State's in college was a big deal. There was other state champs in that bracket. You know what I mean? And to go win that, to take second in that tournament, you made a substantial jump in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah, but my freshman year, I was just kind of floundering around. I beat some guys, and I was wrestling 158, which is a weight class higher than I should have been wrestling. I should have wrestled 150, but there was a good kid there, John Hill, who was a senior who made nationals that year. And Coach took me and Mike Cole to nationals our freshman year to be workout partners with those guys because he thought that the following year we might make it. And the following year I did. I made it to nationals. I ended up beating a really good wrestler from Suffern, John Spiegelman, I think. And he was second in the state in high school. And I beat him twice that year. And the last time I beat him was to go to – I was actually 4th in the division. But there was – my sophomore year, there was top 3 went to nationals. And there was 1 wild card out of the rest. So whoever – they were going to pick one guy out of the 10 weight classes that was 4th to go to nationals, and they picked me to go. And I thought it was great. I think we flew out to Wisconsin, and that was really great. And then after that, I really took it serious. Again, I didn't train in the off season though. I didn't train in the off season. After the season, I would run, stuff like that. I would do some clinics at Carmel for the younger kids. But then we'd pick it back up. Junior year, we were pretty successful again, and I made nationals again. I didn't place again. So there was something still there. I was 1-6 at nationals in the 3 years I went. But for my senior year, Yeah, the state tournament was big. I won the Ithaca tournament, the first tournament out, which was a good tournament. And then the state tournament, I ended up in the finals, and I went OT with this guy Fensky from Army, and he snapped down goal behind me in OT. It was crazy.
Well, do you know, not to bad talk any of your old teammates, are all great guys, but you guys would talk to each other at like Oswego tournament and joke around with each other, whatever. So me being a little Snoopy on myself, I would like look these guys up. You know, I wanted to see what they're all about, just because I love wrestling and I'm kind of curious. And from what I found, and maybe I'm off on some of these stats, but you were the most successful of the group pretty much in the regular season. But a couple of them may have gotten the podium at nationals, and they had good tournaments at the right time. Yeah,
all the guys around me were all Americans,
and that's frustrating in the sense that it's not downplaying these guys, because they were great. They got the job done at an important time, but it almost eerily is similar to my senior year at States, in the fact where I was beating a lot of people and club that I was training with. I was probably doing better than them, and to watch all of them succeed, I'm not happy that they're succeeding. It just might have like said, man, I was right. Those are my guys. I was right there with them. You know,
it does burn when you go into Oswego and you look at the All-American wall and all your buddies are there.
It's tough.
And you're not there, and then or you get onto a Zoom call and everybody's like, "Hey, look at the wall!" And I'm like,
of course, and you'll never forget that. But you know, my thing is this: is that like, you know, and D3 is great. Jay Albus did great. All these guys did great. But
D3 was my only option.
But that's not even the point. The point is that like the New York State tournament was not D3. Those were every team in the country, and you showed your potential in a tournament that I think is, you know, at that time was one of the tougher tournaments probably in the country, because New York had some good wrestling. There was D1, D2, D3 there. But sometimes I think people need to understand that are watching this, even at the most optimal times, it doesn't always go our way, you know, and how do we handle it? You know, and I'm sure it still burns, just as senior year States burns for me. And my conference tournament, my senior year in college, burns for me, you know. But I think all those things made me, and the passion that you take into coaching, I think, and again, speak on this like I spoke on it yesterday. I don't know how you feel about it, but I have an idea that it probably helped you continue to coach and push yourself. And because now you love wrestling. I can talk to you about wrestling almost 4 or 5, 6 times a week, you know, and you're into it. You're into the kids' progresses. You're into the new trends. You're into this guy, that, like you love it, right? Like, do you think if you get All-American your senior year, you might have been an unbelievable coach anyways, but do you think it drove you a little bit? I don't know. Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I didn't go to college to be a teacher. I went as business administration, and then I didn't do so well in business class, business algebra or something. And kept on saying, Mike, do tech ed. You'll be a great teacher. Go teach. So eventually I went into that, and then I got a job right out of right out of college. And, what was I going to do in the winter? I'm definitely going to do something, because for all those years, for the last 9-10 years during the winter, I was wrestling.
Yeah.
And, RC Ketchum, that was my first job, and they had a JV position available. And so I took it. And after that, then I went to Cornwall and was an assistant over there for a while. Modified. I loved doing the modified. I did modified over at Cornwall for a couple of years and JV.
Well, you're great with the modified in the youth. So, like, similar question that you asked me, did the inkling of coaching hit you before, like, your senior year in college or any of that? Or did you ever think when you were a younger guy, like, hey, I might want to do this?
I mean, I used to always, I would always try to help out the younger kids, even when I was on the team. So the younger kids, we would stay after and I'd help them do moves and stuff like that. So, I mean, coaching and helping other kids or giving back was always part of the deal, I thought. So, I mean, I'm very fortunate. And I always say that, there's really not a life after college wrestling unless you're going to coach or officiate. So, I'm very fortunate to be around the game and to meet so many great people like you guys. And, think about all the relationships that we've made, It's just
So, I'm going to jump in here because we're onto your coaching now. And like you said, and thank you, but I feel like it's a pleasure to work with you. You've worked with some coaches, and I know some of them. I don't know who you coach with at Ketchum, but Bill Twardy was a great guy, very loose, but you mentioned something that he kind of snapped you back into place after throwing your headgear and being a disciplinarian?
That was
Right?
Kim Tompkins.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But Coach Twardy going to the Westerly tournament, just seeing how you worked with him and, you know, the relationship that you had with him, you can tell he was a special guy. And then from the years that I was working and watched you at Cornwall, Coach Blaine, a totally different type of a man, very serious, very, I'm not going to say rigid, but he looked very buttoned up and not a lot of emotion, whereas the other man had that emotion. So where your style to me is more like a Coach Twardy, where you are a little bit more loose, but you can be disciplinarian. So how would you see yourself in the coaching aspect based upon the coaches you've worked with and wrestled for?
Well, you know, I think I was fortunate to have Kim Tompkins, who wasn't really a disciplinarian. And I think he would have, I think a rigid coach would have pushed me away from the sport. I think, you know, something like Nikki's turtle disappeared.
Oh, no, we got to find the turtle. This is Joe Rogan stuff, Nikki. Watch it.
Yeah. So I think having a rigid coach would have pushed me away from the sport. And same thing in Oswego. Both of those guys were kind of hands off and, you know, they kind of let you be you and they were super supportive. No matter what, you know, I could have screwed up and Twardy would have got my back. Tompkins would have got my back. You know, they were father figures to me. You know, I owe a lot to Kim Tompkins and a lot to Bill Twardy and a lot to Mike Howard for that matter. You know, those guys had my back when I needed somebody, you know, like when I needed an adult to show me the way and to help me, you know, create a path until I was ready to create the path myself. Those guys are very, very supportive. And I think if I had like a real hard-nosed type, you know, grind, you know, nose to the grind, whatever they call it, I think it would have pushed me away from the sport and I wouldn't have finished. So super fortunate. So I think I'm kind of like that kind of coach where, you know, I kind of see it from their side and maybe I'm a little bit too accepting of certain things. But they're kids. And, you know, like when a kid goes out, Bill Twardy used to say it all the time, you know, I don't know why these coaches are yelling at these kids after they lose. They don't want to lose. Help them win. They don't want to lose. They want to win, but, you know, they lost. So, you know, they think they went out there wanting to lose. So.
I think you have the good mix. You really do. And like people think Debellis is joking around all the time, all this stuff. When he's serious, he's serious. You know, he knows how to play both sides well. You know, there's times when Coach Debellis is upset and I feel it. You know, you know, the room feels it. And a lot of times it's over the general stuff of like, do what you're supposed to do. It's not about winning or losing that really gets him mad. It's more like, you know, you're not acting like a team or you're not, you know, you didn't, you know, you guys are supposed to mop the mats before practice. Like things that are supposed to be done that are just like, hey, there's no reason for you not to do these things, you know, and that seems to really bother him. And he's right. It's like lessons that these kids need to learn, and that bothers him. And then when it comes to the wrestling aspect, yeah, I mean, if you know somebody can give it their all, it definitely bothers him. But he's very good at, I don't know what the right word is, but making the kid feel like we care. You know, where I care deeply too, but sometimes I get fired up, right? I'll you know, if I know I'm feeling like that, I'll go straight to Coach Debellis and say, you talk to him, because I know he's going to say something that's way more beneficial than maybe I will in that moment. You know, I would never say anything bad or mean. I might say, hey, you didn't try your hardest, that wasn't good. You know, and I might leave it at that, cut and dry, right? And Coach Debellis might, you know, bring him back in.
Well, I think that my coaching and just being, you know, who I am has a lot to do with the people that you hang around with, right? And the people that you hang around with, that, you know, they always say, show me who your friends are and I'll show you who you are. And that's, you guys are, you know, the people that I worked with for a common goal, like Coach Torre, Coach Marino, KD, Alex De La Cruz, Anthony Sasso, Danny Hall, you know, these guys that we work together for the kids and the parents for that matter too, because we're all working for them. I think that's, you know, that's the important thing for all of us. We all got to do it. We're all trying to do it to help the kid achieve his goal.
Yeah.
We're done. You know, we've already been through it.
It's not about us.
But you know what I've learned through these interviews is we have a lot we could grow from with these interviews. Learning what these kids went through, we kind of speculated what they went through. And it came out pretty clearly that, you know, they've all had the same fears and the same
crazy
experiences that we had.
That's why I love these, though, and I hope these kids watch these. I really do. You know, I'm pushing it, and Coach Marino came up with some good ideas on how we can maybe get them to watch it. Um, they don't all have to be like this. Like I'm exhausted right now. My baby's been up since 4:30 in the morning, right? All of this stuff, but there's a very good chance. Like I'm having a hard time keeping my eyes open today, right? But there's a very good chance when this interview's over, I'll rewatch it because I love before I fall asleep or something like that because I just love wrestling, right? I love hearing these stories. I love talking about it. And maybe I can't give that love to somebody else. You gotta hope they figure it out. But you know, you're hearing it in Coach Debellis' interview right now. You know, you heard it in every other interview we had what this sport's done for you. Like, don't fight it, don't resist it. You know, it gives. This is a giving sport. It's a painful sport. It's a tough sport, but man, does it give. You know, with life lessons and all of that stuff. And I think Coach has a lot of great life lessons and all the great life lessons Coach learned. You know, he helped. I stole some of those, right? And now the kids I coach will steal some of those. We'll continue paving it forward. You know, and I think that's really important.
Yep.
Well, you can tell that Coach Debellis loves what he does and loves the kids because what he did to research the history at Greeley and post those things up in the old gym and make sure that the history is known in his programs and the Greeley Dual program and everything he does is for the benefit of the kids. You know, again, he's been there since 2002, but make sure that the history is known since the 50s, the emails he does, everything he does is for those kids. And that's the only way. You have to do it right. And there's only one way to do it right, and that's by going all in. And that's leading by example is the best thing you can do. And if the kids, you know, don't take to it, you know, some do, some don't. You're always going to have that, you know, the rule of the thirds. A third of them will, a third of them won't, and a third of them can go either way. So it's those in the middle that you hope you can reach. And I got to say, I mean, I don't know, and we're, you know, getting into strictly coaching now, people don't realize what goes into the coaching, especially what Coach D does to allow our kids to get to the state level tournaments, how he schedules the schedule, how he goes to tournaments to make sure that kids are collecting points because they're seeing a section champ from here, a state finalist from there. And other schools who don't go to some of these tournaments are going to miss out. And he makes sure that we've had a good amount of kids who received wild cards. You know, I don't know that other schools are seeing as many wild card selections as Greeley has. And he knows these points and he's figuring that stuff out. And, you know, to his credit, these kids are benefiting from that, whether they know it or not. And that's a special thing. I have a cousin who was wrestling in Long Island and, you know, for Connecticut High School. And he didn't make a tournament. He didn't get something despite having a good record. And I was speaking to another uncle of mine, and I'm like, well, you know, you got to go to these. You got to get these. You got to go to the Eastern States. Another big thing that didn't happen before Coach Debellis got there. That's a huge tournament. That's huge exposure. That's huge recognition. And that is huge experience for these kids, for the kids. And a lot can be learned from those things. And before this, that just didn't happen here.
No, and it's still.
That isn't all me, though. That's Coach Couture as well.
No. I was going to add to that. I mean,
I know, but
like I said, the wrestling I do a lot with the technique and this, that, and the third. But there's times, and it's actually hysterical. Coach Debellis will call me in the off season, and he'll be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about scheduling this team or this thing," and I'm like, "What did you say?" And I'm like, "I'm on my way to practice or something like that." He's like, "You don't care, do you?" And then he like schedules it. He's like, "You're not listening to me, are you?" And like, you know, he does it right now. At the same time, I would probably be so annoying if we got out of Eastern States. But you know what I would do, right? You know, I wouldn't call them. I'd be like, "They love you, Debellis. Call them. You'll get us in." You know, or whatever it may be, like because he is that guy. Everybody like, I mean, I don't coach like made an I there thing, but everybody loves Coach Debellis. I can't think of many people that don't like him. Any people really. I can't think of anybody that doesn't like him. And
you read my wife.
Stupid. But I use that to my advantage, you know, because I love Coach Debellis too, but I know he has those connections with people, and I know that he could get things done that maybe I wouldn't get done, you know, because of those relationships he's built with other people. And, you know, being that big Section 9 guy in Cornwall and knowing Donnie Blaine, and by knowing Donnie Blaine, he knew the guy, the Eastern State guy, what's like Quilty and these guys. And, you know, Quilty has to do what he does, and he has to do what's fair, but at the same time, coach could have that conversation with him, where other coaches might not get that same conversation, and that's important, and scheduling is important. It's probably annoying. I'll say things to Debellis like, make sure we have this hard dual meet team and this hard dual meet team. But I do nothing to get that done. I just say that to him.
We only have 2 duels that we can actually schedule, and we always end up scheduling the number 1 and number 2 in a section. Don J. Cross River or Fox Lane or North Rockland, Suffern, we've done a couple times. And people would say, well, why would you do that? But this is Coach Tortora too. He says, and the one thing I like about our program that Coach changed for us is that we don't really look to win the dual meets. It's weird. Like we lost so many dual meets because we're trying to get our better wrestlers better matches, even if they might lose the match. And it could cost us the match. And people are like, oh, Donnie Blaine was a great coach, great mentor to me. And he was out to win those dual meets. And he would come up to me, he goes, Mike, why would you do that? You could have won the match if you did it this way. And we're like, well, we don't really care. And they're like, it just blows his mind. He's like, what do you mean you don't care? Doesn't matter.
Until they
experience and exposure.
Like what at the end of the day, like, look, we joke about somebody, Khalid jokes about somebody's record, win-loss record. You know what I'm talking about. I'll leave that at that. Like, who's going to look at mine and Coach? Like, yeah, it'll be great. Coach Debellis had his 100th win a couple years ago as a coach. That's a great milestone. Those are things you do look forward to, right? But when Coach's career is all said and done, the first thing I'm going to look at is what impact did he make on the kids? 1. And it's a huge impact. We already know that, right? The positive impact all around. That's 1. 2, I'm going to look for all state and state champs. That's what matters, right? Like, that's what matters. And hopefully we'll have a team section title, and that matters, but
I think our best years are yet to come, for sure.
Yeah, I think so too. But to say that you have a dual meet record of 400 and 150, that's great. How many team section titles? How many team section titles have you won? And how many New York State champs do you have? Because that's, if we're talking about, I think, again, the biggest thing is impact on child, right? That's number 1. You take that out, and as you can see with these interviews, I think we've done a pretty darn good job with that so far. But take that out, right? State titles and section championships. Until they change what it's about. Do I want to win a dual meet? Yes. Like, let's not paint the picture that me and Coach Debellis are like, let's lose this sucker. Like, but we're like, we take chances. We take chances that are hopefully going to benefit our guys in the long run. And we've taken those chances. We may have lost those duels, but our kids got that big win at sectionals because of those chances.
Well, that's one of the things I think that for my high school career, my college career, I wish we would have went to tournaments that were more open tournaments. I mean, we went to good tournaments and we got beat up at the tournaments in college. But to go out to like some of those open tournaments just to really see, because I remember, I think like Metcalf was in my weight class. I think from at the time I was wrestling. I don't know if that's true. I'm not sure, but he was like at Iowa or something like that. And he was a Division I national champ. I would have loved to try to wrestle that guy. He would have kicked the living daylights out of me. Don't get me wrong, but to see someone in open tournaments.
It makes you better. Well, and I'm sure when you went to college, right? And let's not go, we'll stay in coaching, but just a quick stat that's probably true. When you went to college and you got so much better in the room with those guys, if you came back to a high school practice with a guy a year younger than you that maybe gave you a good go, you would have ripped his head off because you were wrestling at another level, right? I think you kind of sometimes your level of competition will just make you better. And I think that's a perfect example with scheduling. It's the same idea. If you're wrestling nail kids, tough kids all year, you'll be ready for the tough competition at the end of the year. If you're wrestling, you may have a great record, but when that good kid comes, you're gonna be like, holy cow, who is this guy? I didn't see anything like this all year. I'm not ready for this.
Rockport used to wrestle like they'd come into the regional tournament. They'd be like 12-6.
Yeah, he was a good coach, that guy, right?
They would go to like these open tournaments and just crazy hard tournaments. And when it came to nationals, they were good. So
not to jump around too much, but let's get into really quick here because I don't want to miss up your Greeley, because there's a lot of good stuff here, I think. So you get into Greeley around 2000, 2003. I didn't even know you, and I was a high school guy at that time, which to me is insane. That's a disconnect.
I knew who you were.
Which is great, but that's a disconnect maybe Cleo had with Modified and a guy like you, a section champ around my size. It would have been great to have you to be in the room, but I didn't even know. I didn't even know who our Modified coach was at the time. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. The program wasn't the same in that sense. You made it a real and again, I don't want to dig on Clay. I'm sure he did it for a very long time, but he was very deep into his career at that time, and maybe that just wasn't his priority. But you made it a program again. You made it like the youth wrestlers, the middle school wrestlers, and the high school wrestlers. Everybody knows each other. Everybody's part of one family, right? That's Coach Debellis. And when you first got there, we were just coming up from a peak, and then we were going into a valley. And that's when you took over. Do you remember around 2008 as a varsity coach, the climate of the program?
When I came in, I thought we were going to win a section title that year. I was going to get coach of the year. That was my mindset. I thought that was going to happen. Yeah. And I got there, and it just wasn't it. I mean, it was just, I had one kid make sections, and he told me, "Oh, I can't make it." We were in the semifinals of the Portchester tournament, and a kid comes up to me. He says, "Coach, I got to go." I go, "You're in the, what do you mean? You're in the semis. What are you talking about?" "I have choir practice." I'm like, "What are you talking about? You have choir? What does that mean? I don't even understand." "Well, I don't want to let them down." I'm like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" And then the same thing happened at sections. The kid made sections. "Oh, I can't go." I'm like, "I can't." It was just, the culture was just different.
It was tough.
And there was a lot of questioning and like, why are we doing it this way? Why we used to do it, and like we'd wrestle Fox Lane. Fox Lane was so good, and we had some freshmen out there that I would say that Joe Musto Sr., he was a great guy to me. All those coaches were great to me. Like Joe and Bill Swartfager, Bill Twardy. Actually, my first varsity win was against Bill Twardy at Carmel, and he did the same thing. He threw a kid out there that he knew was going to lose just to get me to win, and I was like, he's just that kind of guy. He didn't care. He was like, but I don't even know where I was going with that, but it was
the culture and the questioning, and it was different. It was different.
Oh, I know what it was. So I'd go up to Joe. I'd say, "Joe, look, I think I call him Coach. I would never call him Joe, but I say, Coach, I'm going to forfeit this weight class. I want you to get this kid a JV match because he's not going to get anything out of the match." And I remember some of the kids like, "Well, when we were freshmen, we got thrown to the wolves." And I'm like, "But what is that going to do for the kid?"
Nobody gets better that way.
Let him get into a match where he can try something. He still got his butt kicked on the JVs. I mean, they weren't good. So we're going to lose the match. I'm like, wait a second. You're not beating Fox Lane with a baseball bat.
You know what's funny about some of those kids too, and they were good kids.
They were great kids. Kevin Frances was a great kid. David Freed, Mike Holmes.
Mike Freed was a very good kid. I liked him a lot. But when I first got back, really,
they were all great kids. They just were. It was the 2 years after you left. I don't think there was. When I had them in 8th grade, they were tough. I had like 20 kids on my team my first year, 7th and 8th grade, and they were tough.
And then they came up to us, and the thing is, I think the culture even was getting different in the room at that time too, where it was either me, Greg, or Burke, or you weren't doing it, and I'd like to think that we would bring those kids along. What's that, Coach?
Here's another thing that people don't realize. When we are wrestling modified, a lot of the teams they're wrestling against, those modified kids who are better are up on varsities.
Oh, yeah.
So they're not getting the competition that they think they are by saying, "Hey, I did this at this level," because then they're coming up and getting whacked, that first year. And it's a big difference. They're wrestling other schools, kids who didn't make the varsity. And that is the difference. So, they have to keep that in mind as well.
They were good kids. They just weren't. They just didn't have they needed more time in the right program.
Here's my thing too is those same kids. When I was a senior, like Greg said, we were very open to let kids come train with us and do the extra stuff. And those guys weren't really so gung ho about that. So I think it's kind of interesting that by the time they were seniors, that they would say, "Well, we didn't do it this way." Well, you probably weren't doing it right, and you probably should have paid it. Whatever. I mean, and neither here nor there. Kevin, great kid. And we talked about how wrestling might be different for some people, but I think they should have just trusted in you and kind of let it ride. But you built.
2 years, I had Stan Sutherland as my assistant coach, and he was terrific. He was really good.
But so you built the program because the youth. When I first came there, so you really started doing the youth probably in 2008, 2007 ish.
First year I did varsity, I did the youth.
So 2008. So by the time I came there in the year of 2010, 2011, we still had a lot of work to do, but those were just varsity at that time. Those guys didn't go through your youth program, most of them, and then the next year, actually my first year Billy was there, so you kind of had Billy a little bit, I guess, in youth, maybe for a year or two. Yeah, he was a freshman, so you maybe had Billy and Mitchell for like a year or two in youth, but they ended up being really good. So their freshman year, they weren't there yet. And I remember Tribo telling me when I first started coaching there, and this is what Coach Debellis dealt with as a, in 2008. He looked at me and said, Anthony, this is a real tough egg to crack.
Right.
And I love Chapel Park kids. I am a Chapel Park kid, right? Jacob Ferreira, who's a bad son of a gun, is a Chapel Park kid. But sometimes we let our advantages take advantage. And in a sport like wrestling, it's a little hard if that happens. And I'm sure that's the case in 2008. And that kind of, thank God Debellis did what he did with the youth, but it was still the case in 2010. But the reserves were coming. They were coming. And again, people like to say, like, well, Andy did this, Andy did that. I didn't start Scotty Wims into wrestling. I didn't start Brashianovich into wrestling. I didn't start Mitchell Klein into wrestling and Billy Marino. And, as a team, Coach Marino, Coach Debellis, and ourselves improved them when they got to high school. And we changed the culture. I think we needed more than one person to change the culture. Like Coach Debellis said in 2008, he wanted to be the Coach of the Year section champ. But it's hard, especially in a school like Chappaqua. And I think when we kind of formed our team as coaches, I think that's what changed the culture, because you needed Coach Marino's angle. You needed Coach Debellis' angle. You needed my angle, right? We needed all these different angles to cultivate a culture, which I think to this day still stands pretty strong.
Yeah. Well, I heard that our team was out there running at Gedney Park today.
Yep, and they did really well. And you know what else I heard? That Matt Schreiber and Aaron Walk were there, because it's part of our culture, right? Who else does that?
I think we're gonna. I'd like to, see what's gonna bring the next 10 years. It's gonna be good.
I mean, and let the people that are listening to this in on conversations. I was texting with Coach Marino and Coach Debellis like last night or 2 nights ago. I don't remember when, and people would think, I'm 10 years in. Coach Marino, Coach Debellis is probably like 15 or 16 or 17 years into coaching if you count Cornwall and RCK. He's got a couple of years in there, maybe 20. I don't know. Coach Marino, even though he's not coaching with us at this moment, is still an integral part of the program. As you can see behind us, his wife is a trainer, and she deals with our guys on a regular basis. So she's probably telling Coach Marino stories when she gets home, and I'm still texting with Coach Marino, Coach Debellis. Like he's at all of our matches. Very much in tune, and we're talking, and I'm incredibly fired up. I'm not even close to being satisfied with where we're at. I would love to see an Oliver Alt make a section finals next year. What a friggin' story that would be. You know what I mean? I would love Michael Amatrado, a guy that had a losing record his first 2 years on varsity, to be a section champ next year. Vinny Sasso to be the best of them all. We got other great guys, Tommy, Josh, both DA, all these guys, Luke Richards. I don't want to miss any names by naming people, but they're in. They're on the Zoom calls. They're at Gedney Park. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So if other coaches are watching this, beware. We're coming.
I wish we could start today.
Yeah.
But I thank you guys for the interview. That was great.
Well, and just let me echo for you real quick too, because we didn't run through the whole thing because we went for a while with your other stuff.
Yeah.
So 2008, so the people that are watching, 2008, he came in, he was ready to go, did everything. He put a program together, right? He built the youth, modified varsity. And now, instrumental in Scotty Wims, Brashianovich, Jacob Ferreira, Matt Schreiber, Aaron Walk. I think when I did that list, we have over 20 all-section guys. We have over 5 all-state guys, and we have a state champ. And not to name names, but somebody was put into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago as a coach, and he did not have those numbers. And I think Coach Debellis has done something that is really impressive in a place where people would have not have maybe thought it would have happened that quickly.
A league title as well?
League title. Coach Marino, you got a really good memory. That was the first league title in how many years?
Yeah, it's too long.
I didn't get one. We didn't get it when I was in high school. It was over. It was like the early 90s.
Yeah.
So it was like 2016 we got it or something, or 17. We need to get another one. But, unfortunately, we get thrown in Fox Lane's league a lot. And I love competition. But, when the team's going for a 4-peat of a section title, it's a little hard to win the league. We beat Fox Lane to win the league. But iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel, or whatever the saying is. But yeah, what was it, 92? And Debellis got it done in 2016, 2017, and that was really fun.
Yeah, I wish you could have got a couple, but
We should have got a couple. We should have actually. This year wasn't a great year for us, but I think we should have probably won it this year. We didn't have a tough league.
No, we didn't.
We lost a bad match. We lost a bad match.
We lost the protester.
Oh no, it wasn't 2 years ago. We should have won with Aaron and Matt. We lost to Matt and Z.
Remember when we lost to Sleepy Hollow 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was bad. That was bad. And Sleepy and Coach Tompkins is a legendary coach, but that wasn't his year. Like they just weren't having. They didn't have any qualifiers that year for sectionals.
No.
Yeah, we had a state champ and a fifth place in the state that year, but we lost him in the duel. That was not good.
You're looking at me like, are we gonna lose this?
I remember telling Debellis like, no, we're not gonna lose, and then we lost. I'm like, oh no. I called Mr. Schreiber on the way home. Another, we don't talk about Schreiber enough in these, but man, that guy's an intricate part of this program too. He's done a lot. He's done a lot. I love it. I love Schreiber. I love his passion.
Great.
It's great, man. So I don't know. I'm good, D. Unless you got anything else to say.
We don't want to bore anybody, but no, it's been a great run, and at all the years I've been here, it's been mostly positive stuff from parents and kids and administrators. I think we are well respected on campus. I mean, the administrators love our program, the parents love our program, and I think that we have the best interest of the kids at heart, and that's why they respect our program. So.
Fun fact too, D, and then we'll let you guys go. Me and Karen, I think I don't know if I talked to you about this, Marino, but I definitely said it to Debellis before. So the people that are listening know that most of you know I have a 6-month-old at home now. And again, that's why I'm so freaking tired. But we were joking because Nikki Debellis, who's in the Chappaqua School District right now, and Jake as well. We're still trying to get Jake to get the wrestling bug. He's got it, but he's not. Nick is into it. Like Jake's kind of getting it. He's young, Jake's young. And
running the hills with the kids and
awesome.
fishing today.
Nick's a savage. So, but my point is, and I know Nick's getting a lot better at wrestling. I'm very excited for when he makes that jump up to varsity. But Nick is like a ride or die with me and Debellis. He comes up to tournaments with us. Obviously, it's Coach's son, but he's with the guys. He loves watching the high school guys. And I remember going up to a tournament this year. Actually, it might have been states. So we might not have been. It might have been in between sessions. I don't know. But I remember saying to Nikki, like, Nikki, you have fun coming up to tournaments with, like, me and your dad and stuff and all the kids? Like, yeah. I go, what's going to be cool? He goes, what? I said, when you're wrestling in these tournaments, Luca's going to be coming up with me and your dad to watch you wrestle in high school. And he, like, looked at me with, like, a profound face, like, man, that is cool. He wants it. I'm super excited to watch him compete. He's the man.
And then we're going to get Andrew and Ant's son, Marino's son. He's going to transfer over.
Oh, that'd be unbelievable. Let's get him. I'm in trouble right now, though. Luca, we're in Valhalla. I'm going to talk to Jamie Block because Jamie Block is the AD at Valhalla. And Valhalla is combined with Byram Hills, which is up in Armonk. I think Chappaqua closer. Why are they not combined with Chappaqua?
We can do that. Don't worry about it.
I'm going to make a phone call to Jamie because I love Joe Grippy, but sorry, Joey.
I texted Jamie, and he will do an interview here, too.
Ooh. We might have, we're getting ready to wrap up, but we could throw Jamie Block in there. That's a good one.
Head of the section.
Let's do it. I will get Jamie Block. That's a good idea, Coach Marino. But anyway, let's
let me know. I'll schedule a date.
Yeah, we could really get him on the Valhalla situation. It'll be a sneak.
Put him on the spot.
It'll be a sneak attack. Yeah, don't tell him. I hope he's not watching right now.
All right.
Coach Debellis, I appreciate it. You're a mentor. You're the man. The kids love you. Coach Marino, I'm sure, loves you. I think Joanne kind of likes you. And that's where we're at right now. But thanks, guys.
Thank you for being a friend.
Thank you for being a friend. Yes.